Hello, my dear ones. There is no way, or at least I couldn't find any way, to introduce this topic, so I'm just going to start without any sort of introduction. Every 4 years, the whole world has to deal with and somehow find the means to survive another set of US presidential elections. The mad circus has descended upon the world once again, and once again our emails are being filled up to the brim with people asking that we should take one side or another, or in some cases people demanding in a very righteous way that we should stand up for the Christian path, the Christian choice, where the Christian choice is defined by very small prints in the back of their minds. It has nothing to do with Christ, it has nothing to do with Christ's church, and it has everything to do with their own subjective, deeply personal way of reading the gospel, and that implies picking and choosing bits and pieces and ignoring the rest of the gospel. But that doesn't stop them from being very righteous in their, again, demands that we should step up and voice support for the Christian choice. And first I want to clarify that we do indeed have to stand up for Christ and for His truth, which is Christ Himself. We do indeed have to voice support for the truth, as the Church has given witness to that truth for 2,000 years. Because the greater devil, the greater evil here is to be quiet and to allow silence to create a void in the public sphere, in this public conversation about what is really the way forward, who does one have to vote for in order to protect, to some degree at least, a Christian society. The greater risk, the demonic risk, is that the world manages to quiet us down, to silence us down, by inducing so much fear that one really just refuses to address these questions. Because the reason I say this is a demonic action, and that is done on purpose by the world, this fear that is being induced to speak out upon the shepherds of the church, upon the church herself, this fear is demonic, and this is a project that's being clearly built on purpose so that a void, a silence is created. And then the world itself is clearly, I can see it happening today, the world itself is stepping in and filling up that void and claiming to represent the Christian voice instead of the church. Because as long as the church herself is going to be out there speaking out and telling all of us this is Christ's teaching, this is the Christian way to navigate through this mad circus, as long as the church is present, as long as the voice of the church is clearly heard, then no political party, no politician can step in and say, we are the Christian choice, or I am the chosen one of God, and if you choose for me, you are voting for Christ. How ridiculous and anti-Christian can that be? So, of course, this has to be done with fear. On the one hand, fear, because you do not want to misrepresent Christ and you do not want to misrepresent His church. On the other hand, there's the human fear of losing people whom you love, people who support you and support, your parish or your monastery, your lives here. That has happened to us in the past. People whom we loved, people who we know loved us, people who had supported the monastery in the past, stepped away because they perceived things we said as being either for one party or the other. It is a demonic action to stand up and say, as a politician or as a political party, we are the Christian choice. This is black on white clear, because there is nothing Christian between having to choose. There's nothing Christian in having to choose between a party that supports the murder of 1 million of unborn children and another party that supports the death and the suffering of millions of people who struggle to live their lives. Millions of people who cannot afford, in one of the richest, if not the richest countries in the world, they struggle to have access to basic human rights such as health or education, or even to simply have the right to live in a country. There's nothing Christian about either one of those choices. There's nothing Christian in the fact that both the major parties in the US support wars in this whole world and implicitly support the death of hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of people every single year. They support, both parties support genocides as we speak right now. There's nothing Christian about these Christian options. And this is what the church is teaching us. And this is the voice of Christ telling us, when they tell you that Christ is here or over there, don't listen to them. That is the voice of the world. And behind the voice of the world, there's always the voice of the devil masquerading as Christ, masquerading as an angel of light. There is nothing Christian on either side of this mad battle, this mad circle. Of course, and I have to answer this, as a Christian, one has to vote. If I lived in the United States, I would vote. And I know exactly for whom I would vote. But that is a personal choice. I would be fully aware that whomever I choose is not Christ, is not Christ's chosen one, and does not by any means represent Christ or his church. This should be a given for all of us, my beloved ones. This is not a choice between the Christian option and the anti-Christian option. Both parties, in what they represent and what they stand up for, they are anti-Christian. You have to own up to that, because once you realize that, you are free from thinking, oh my God, if I make the wrong choice, I am betraying Christ. Whatever you choose is going to be wrong. And yet you still have to choose something. Because in any given context, one choice is going to be worse than the other. And so you have to at least support the lesser devil, the lesser evil, so that we can at least delay the outcome, which is going to be the destruction of the world anyway. But we have to at least do everything we can to delay that outcome, to stand up for the small goodness. My God, the world we live in, the small goodness that becomes apparent simply by comparing two devils. One is darker than the other, so the other one is just a little bit lighter than the other one. All I'm trying to tell you is not to vote for Party A or Party B. That would be political, and that is something that I would only do if I perceived, at least, that one party is indeed motivated, nourished by Christian values, and I do not see that in anyone and any party in any of the countries I've grown to know quite well. But I am here to tell you that as a Christian, your place and my place is to be neither on this side nor on that side. We are supposed to be up here. We are not supposed to be part of this conversation. We are not supposed to be caught up by the passion of this mad circus. We are supposed to be up here so we can perceive with the objectivity of Christ's truth, not with the subjective truth of our own personal selves. We may perceive how both or all parties get it wrong. Our place as the followers of the crucified one can only be on that cross. Of course, if you say that killing millions of innocent unborn children, of course saying that is going to create enemies of one side of the political spectrum everywhere in this world. And of course, when you say that it is anti-Christian, equally anti-Christian, to condemn to painful deaths millions of refugees or tens of millions of citizens of your own countries because of this ridiculous, I don't want to say stupid, but that's what's on my mind, anti-Christian idea that if I have something I cannot share with someone else and somehow that makes me a Christian. It makes zero sense in any life and any world. Of course, when you say that, you create enemies on the other side of the spectrum. So you end up being actually the enemy of both sides. But that's okay. That's all right, because this is where we belong. Christians do not belong with hearts and souls in either one of these choices, because both of these choices are wrong, both of these choices are anti-Christian. As a Christian, you can only be on a cross, hated by both parties, because you speak the truth, and the truth will condemn both sides. What do you do as a human being, as a tiny, little, insignificant, small human being that each of us is? Well, you go there and you vote. You make a choice based on your own personal fears and hopes, your own personal sins and whatever traces of virtues we have. But at the foundation of any choice has to be that whatever we choose, whomever we vote for, they do not represent Christ. They do not speak the language of the church. The language of the church and Christ himself condemns equally all politicians, all parties that you have, at least at this moment, in the United States. That has to be a given. That has to be the foundation of your choice. And we also have to make peace with the fact that by condemning every single politician and every single policy of every single party as being what they are, anti-Christian, and there is no difference really between choosing this devil or that devil, only subjectively, but by condemning everyone, you will end up being hated by both sides. Of course you are. You are not going to be supported by either side. You are going to be supported and you are going to be loved by persons. Person to person, we can communicate. Person to person, this is the way out of this network, this trap that the devil through the world is building up for all of us. The way out is not to support parties or policies or politicians, but to support real, personal human beings, your neighbors, your family, the people with whom you can create a real connection. And they don't have to be physically next to you. You can look in the eyes of a pregnant mother and you can understand both the fear of going forward with an abortion and the fear of having to let go of her dreams and of her life as she imagined and hoped it to be. You can look in the eyes of such a woman, even if you've never met her, and you can understand the drama, the battle inside. You can understand the frustration of having been abandoned in that situation, the frustration that the man is not equally condemned, the hypocrisy that condemns her to make this choice and the man is free. You can also just look in the eyes of a suffering man or a woman, old person or child, who's waiting somewhere at some customs in the cold by themselves, having left behind a lifetime of memories, having abandoned everything they knew and everything whom they loved, driven out of the desperation that they'll create a better lives, almost always not for themselves, but for their children and their grandchildren. You can look in their eyes and you can see the same love and fear that your own mother, your own father would struggle with, given that same conflict, that same battle. If our own parents had to put up with a world that's being destroyed by wars that almost always are being funded from somewhere else, or if our own mothers and fathers had to struggle with a world which is burning by changes in this climate of ours that are induced by choices that we've made in the richer countries. Our own mothers, our own fathers would leave their countries and do everything they can so that they can ensure for us a better life, a better future. Look in the eyes of these people with whom you disagree and try to enter their personal battles, and you will see their humanity. And once you perceive their humanity, you will realize that their humanity is your humanity. There's nothing different between us. This is the way out. Love is the way out, not embracing one party over the other, one policy over the other. I pray you've heard my love today, my beloved ones, and not something I never really intended to say. This was not political. This was Christian. This was entirely out of the love I feel for all of you, and because I understand the struggle of having to choose something. Be blessed to the core of your beings, my beloved ones. Amen, amen, amen.